In today's show, the Blazers go into draft night with 3 picks and leave with 2 rookies. Is Shaedon Sharpe a superstar of the future? And who's Jabari Walker? Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It is your past first point guard, Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. It's free, 5 days a week, every single weekday. So why not make this show your first listen every single day? Tell your friends to do the same, and then you'll have something to chat about once you get to the afternoon. It's draft night, y'all. We got a fun show. Fun show. The Blazers, they land Shaedon Sharpe with the number 7 overall pick. They trade the number 46 pick to Denver, and they land Jabari Walker out of Colorado with the 57th pick. I want to talk about both rookies. Today's show is mostly going to be about Shaedon Sharpe because, quite frankly, I learned about Jabari Walker about 15 seconds after he was selected by the Trailblazers, and I looked him up. So my familiarity, we will get there, and I'll talk about him a bunch next week and try to bring some people on the show who are more familiar with him. But today's show is going to be, the bulk of today's show is going to be about Shaedon Sharpe. The Blazers went into this draft with 3 selections. They had number 7, they had number 46, and they had number 57. Technically, the way it works, like they still had 36 and blah, 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 but that pick has been traded to Detroit. They had 46, and they ended up moving that one to Denver. So they ended up with 2 selections. And at 7, there was some speculation that the Blazers would use this pick to acquire a veteran, right? It was OG Anunoby, or it was Lou Dort and something else, or it was potentially John Collins. John Collins still a Hawk. OG Anunoby still a Raptor. Lou Dort still a Thunder. There wasn't if there were going to be fireworks in this draft, they didn't happen early. And it was like the pivot points were going to be 4 with the Kings, and then maybe whatever happened with Detroit, who ended up making moves but not at 5, and then potentially with Portland and New Orleans at 7 and 8. None of that happened. Those teams just made their picks. And so when the Blazers were on the clock, the guys were there. The 2 names they've been most obviously linked to have been Shaedon Sharpe and Dyson Daniels. Everyone, like the plugged-in people, have been saying that it's basically those 2 names. No Keegan Murray on the board, no Benedict Mathurin on the board, so some of your boys' personal favorites were already gone. And they landed with Shaedon Sharpe, someone who oozes potential, but doesn't have much production. The mystery man of the draft. In fact, ESPN ran a truly comical Austin Powers graphic package about the mystery man, international man of mystery that is Shaedon Sharpe. If you were born in 2003 and when you get drafted, they put out a Austin Powers graphics package, that's tough. But it was clearly for a crowd more of my generation for sure. So let's talk Shaedon Sharpe. The Blazers do not make a trade because probably there's no trade to be made. My read on there was no trade to be made is because the way draft night works is like the networks are, ESPN and ABC, same company, but they're running simultaneous draft shows, and then everybody is Jeremy Woo and Jake Fisher and Shams Charania and Adrian Wojnarowski are just tipping picks, right? They're giving up picks before they happen on Twitter. And when it came to the Blazers pick for 5 minutes, for 4.5 of those minutes, maybe 4 minutes and 25 seconds, nobody had anything. No. Hey, the Blazers are talking trades. They just had nothing for 4 minutes, which leads me to believe that the Blazers were still working the phones. I don't think they'll specifically talk about that. Joe Cronin is literally doing his post-game presser right now, and his early remarks about Shaedon Sharpe did not include that. He said he can't really talk about pending trades. And certainly he's not going to talk about potential trades. He's going to talk about how excited he is to land Sharpe. So let's talk about who Shaedon Sharpe is. He didn't measure at the combine because he didn't do anything. He's just been a low data guy. But 6'5" with a nearly 7-foot wingspan, or if you're looking somewhere else, 6'6" with a nearly 7-foot wingspan. the size to play 2 and 3 in the league, but probably the frame right now to certainly just be a 2 at his age. And he's young, he's 19. He's born in London, Ontario, a Canadian who spent most of his youth right there in between Detroit and Toronto. He played his freshman season in Canada. In sophomore year, he transferred to a private school in Kansas and wasn't very good. Like he just, that's a year you're going to go to the U.S. and pop and like, that summer, usually between sophomore and junior year, is when guys change that is the biggest summer for recruiting typically, or a massive summer, I should say, for recruiting typically is that year, was when guys kind of take off and put themselves on the stage. And then the following summer, they kind of solidify where they are as players. Everyone, late bloomers or people who rise early and fall late, all those things like that. But Sharpe wasn't that. And then after his sophomore year, he transferred to Dream City Christian School in Glendale, Arizona, where he spent the final 2 years of his high school career. His life changed in the summer of 2021. So he was like a top 20 pick in that in what was going to be the 2022 class. Or excuse me, he was going to be the top player in the 2022 class. But he was like a top 20, maybe even top 50 guy in 2021 high school, in his 2021 high school graduating class. And then the summer of 2021 happened. On the Nike EYBL circuit, Shaedon Sharpe was the best player. He was dominant, and it changed the course of everything. So like literally, we're talking a few months of basketball on the AAU level. Shaedon Sharpe went from being like, oh, this is one of the best high school players in the country, to this is the best high school player in the country, and he can play in the NBA very soon. He committed to Kentucky. He reclassified, so he graduated early from high school and enrolled in Kentucky for the second semester and chose not to play at Kentucky. Just practiced a little bit and didn't play. He just has never played a high-level high school basketball game. There is very, very little tape on him. I mean, there's tape. Like I've watched a 12-minute YouTube clip during the draft to kind of refamiliarize myself with Shaedon Sharpe, and I'll straight up, like, his mixtape is tantalizing. His skill set is superstar stuff. It is what superstars do. He has a really fluid looking jump shot. He is a wild vertical leaper who has crazy dunk highlights when he gets some runway to do so. And he can create off the dribble with step backs and get space with, one-on-one scoring and shooting, rising up and shooting over people on pull-ups, on step backs for three, on pull-ups from mid-range, and then getting all the way to the rim. His weaknesses is probably just his handle isn't super tight, but he's such a fluid athlete with such a good-looking jumper. It is the superstar skill package, right? Like, this dude is a straight up superstar, and he would have been the best player in his high school class had he not gone with the kids who were older than them, right? Like, had he not graduated early, enrolled early in college, and done all that, and he was still a 5-star recruit in his class, but instead of being the consensus number one, like he would have been, he was, somewhere 12, 14, 15, depending on what service you're looking at, but still a 5-star kid, like still rose way the hell up there and was like clearly very, very good. And then by the end of that summer, it was clear he was the best, one of the best players in the country, and was the top recruit by the time he committed to Kentucky by the end of that summer. Like, dude was a monster. The summer of 2021 changed his life. It absolutely changed his life. And then here we are the following summer, and he's the 7th pick in the NBA draft. He has the upside to be one of the best scorers in the draft. If he had gone back to school, or if he had just played some games at Kentucky, he might have been a top 5 pick. He might have put himself in the mix to be ahead of someone like Jaden Ivey, who people think has all-star upside. That's how good Shaedon Sharpe could be. He's also never played a high-level basketball game. He's never played he's never played like big-time college basketball, not a single second. Certainly never, didn't do anything at the NBA Combine. The highest level of basketball anyone's seen him play is a very competitive AAU level as a teenager. There is just so little to see of him. So the range for him is a little bit broader, and that's what I want to talk about in the second segment, is like, the upside is so clear, but does he fit what the Blazers are doing? And sort of the timeline and fit with the team makes this pick, while exciting, feel a little bit hard to totally square. That's what I want to talk about, squaring that pick in the second segment. But before we do that, I want to tell you about winning an NBA Jam console. NBA Jam is back, and Arcade 1-Up, the leader in at-home retro arcade games, is not only bringing back NBA Jam, but they've made it bigger than ever with the Shaq Edition machine. I grew up playing a ton of NBA Jam. Me and my homie Charles would play hours and hours of it, and until you're sort of the thumb on the inside of your thumb, if you know what I'm talking about, really hurt from trying to hit turbo, pass, and shoot, or hold turbo and shoot at the same time and get your dunks off. I've played a bunch of them in the arcade console stuff, and I've played it at the sort of retro arcades as well too. It would be a ton of fun, and if you're like me and you want to rekindle that fun, Arcade 1-Up, that's arcade1up.com, is giving you a chance to win a free machine. They've got, not just NBA Jam, because they do all of this all the time, Golden Tee, Mortal Kombat, all that stuff. It starts at just $399. But to win an NBA Jam Shaq Edition machine, it's available. It's an opportunity for you, Locked On listener. You go to arcade1up.com/lockedon. That's arcade1up.com/lockedon. You've got until July 8th to enter to win that NBA Jam Shaq Edition console. So don't miss out. Enter today and decide who you're going to play with. All right. Shaedon Sharpe has superstar upside. Superstar upside. Best offensive player in this draft upside. Would have been the number one pick next year type of upside, right? Like, he is that good. And that's the risk the Blazers took. If you're familiar, if you're a longtime listener to the podcast or just have started listening recently, I did my who the Blazers should take. That was an episode I did last week, or earlier this week, rather, Tuesday. This is Friday, This is Friday, June 24th show. That was Tuesday's show. And I landed on Ben Mathurin. And in that show, I did sort of here are my top 12. And I had Shaedon Sharpe ranked 6th in my top 12 and Mathurin ranked 7th. And the reason why I landed Mathurin more than Sharpe is, one, I thought Sharpe would be off the board. I thought Indiana or Detroit or Sacramento just couldn't pass up on his potential. And also I think Ben Mathurin's closer to being like a day one contributor than Sharpe. And I think that is the concern, is that Sharpe just hasn't played a lot of high-level basketball. And while his ceiling is incredibly high, he's probably not much of a contributor during the 2022-23 season. He'll probably need a little bit of time to get there, just to fill out his frame, just to play basketball at a high level. I am fascinated to see this dude play in Summer League. Might have to book a trip to Vegas to see it in person, because it's going to be super fascinating. Let's see him play against NBA guys, right? See him play the Summer League is not a higher level than basketball than maybe a really good EYBL game, but it is different. There are older players for sure, stronger players for sure in a Summer League game, but the upside with Sharpe is so massive, superstar upside. But there's such a wider range of what he could be, because it's not I don't think he's going to be whatever the word bust means. I was trying not to use that word, but I'll just say it. Because typically guys with his pedigree who have been the number one player in their recruiting class, pretty much all of them turn out to be long-term NBA players unless health gets in the way. Harry Giles is the name that comes up. He was pretty clearly the best player in his recruiting class. His knees just didn't work. It just didn't hold out for him, and it happens. But guys who have stayed healthy, typically with that Sharpe pedigree, have been NBA players. It's a mixed bag. Some of them are Anthony Davis, some of them are Harrison Barnes, some of them are Avery Bradley, but NBA players, long-term dudes who contribute at a high level in the league. RJ Barrett comes up for one. I'm not really worried about Sharpe not being able to play at this level, but I think there's a chance he doesn't reach his potential as a all-star type of contributor. And he might not reach that just because, right, we haven't seen him play a lot, and tracking a guy from being a really, really good 17-year-old to a 24-year-old star in the league is just, there's a lot of different divergent paths that they could go on. And particularly when you don't have a handful more high-level basketball games where you can say, okay, well, he did this and this and this. There's just not a lot of data out there. And two, specifically on this Blazers team, there's not a lot of space for him in the near term to be a contributor. Damian Lillard is going to play 35 minutes a night. Anthony Simons is going to re-sign with the Blazers, and he's going to play 34 minutes a night. Josh Hart is going to play a ton of minutes at probably both 2 and the 3, but a lot of minutes at 2 because I don't think they love the 3-guard lineup. They might have to play some of it just because of the way the roster is, but like they're going to try to avoid that. Josh Hart is going to play a lot of minutes, at 28, 29, 30 minutes a night at the guard spots. There's just, and you're already up against it. There's 96 minutes for guards. I don't think the Blazers can carve out a big role for Shaedon Sharpe in year one. And if they did, even if they did, it doesn't really make sense that they, even if they could, right? Even if it could, it doesn't necessarily make sense for this team, the Blazers, who expressly want to make the playoffs, to find 17 developmental minutes a night for someone like Shaedon Sharpe. Other teams picking in the top 10 typically have a 30-minute hole that says you can go, Jalen Green, you can go be bad every night. And by the end of the year, when you get really good, the first 29, 35 games or whatever where you weren't very good won't matter because we're trying to get you there in the future. The Blazers want to be good. And I think that is the other part about the Shaedon Sharpe pick that is a little bit hard to square. Before the draft, the Blazers traded for Jeremy Grant. It's not an all-in move, but as a move for a veteran, they traded, second-round picks. They traded 36th pick in this draft, which is you could consider it a late first. It's really close to, it's high up in the second round. A 2025 first-round pick from the Bucks that has at least some value as a future pick. It's been moved a whole bunch of times, so certainly some teams like trading it, even if they don't maybe someone will finally use it when we get to 2025. We'll see. But it's that was a move to get better, to add a veteran. Jeremy Grant's 28, going to turn 29. To add someone that is much closer to 32-year-old Damian Lillard's age and say, let's go for it because Dame wants to be good. And the Blazers have said so many times that they want to be good and they want to be good with this core and they want to be good on this timeline and all these things. Shaedon Sharpe doesn't fit that necessarily, which is why it's hard to square, which is why I think people were rooting for the Blazers to go ahead and trade this pick, find out what they can get for it, and add another veteran or trade back and add a veteran and a lower level pick and move from there. That seemed like a pretty reasonable move. It's clear that the Blazers did their due diligence, is the things that Cronin was talking about, is pretty clear the Blazers discussed a lot of trade possibilities with OG Anunoby and for OG Anunoby with the Toronto Raptors. It's been reported that they were in discussions with the Hawks and also with OKC. They certainly gauged the value of this pick. And then when Sharpe's on the board, it's his upside is maybe too much to pass up. And from what we know about Cronin is that he's someone who would prefer the Shaedon Sharpe types. It's bigger risk, bigger reward type of thing. It's that's just he's said publicly on the record that's what the types of players he prefers. So the sort of balancing that trade deal with, okay, here's what it looks like. Here's the packages that are on the table. Okay, we know we don't want to go all in for what they're asking versus what we think Sharpe can be. That's the balance you make, and they decided to go in this direction, right? But going in this direction is a little bit harder to square because of what they've already done and what they've said so publicly. They want to be good. They want to do all these things. They want to they want to make the playoffs. And Sharpe is a guy who, if he pops, is going to pop in year 2 and 3 and 4, right? He's going to be, his all-star potential is a little bit further down the line. He is not a win now contributor type player. So it is a little bit confusing. Not I get the Sharpe thing. I actually can see both sides very clearly. I think it's the reverse of confusing. I think it is mostly just the Blazers are trying to run two paths, because the one path is Shaedon Sharpe has superstar upside. He might be one of the best players in this draft. He's there at 7. How many times do you pick at 7? Portland's path to drafting superstars is absolutely this. This is the way, if you are running the Portland Trail Blazers, this is the responsible, smart, and best way to build a winner. 100%. I've been in favor of them just drafting at 7 because of exactly that, because this is the way you do it. However, all of the other stuff still exists. Damian Lillard's wishes, Damian Lillard's age, the trade they just made for Jeremy Grant, their on-the-record statements that they want to be a competitive playoff team immediately. That doesn't exactly fit the Shaedon Sharpe timeline. And if Shaedon Sharpe is way ahead of it, if he's already good, then the roster construction with Hart and Simons in his way and Dame in his way doesn't necessarily get there. I think Sharpe could potentially be a small forward in the league, just because of his size, size and long arms and athleticism. If he gets strong enough, I think he's the right, like if you're 6'6" and you are strong and have long arms, you can get away with it a lot easier. Or 6'5", whatever he is with 6'5" with strength, you can get away playing 3. If you're not strong enough, you're probably a 2, just because of the nature of who you're going to have to guard. But Sharpe isn't going to be that until he's a little bit older, just because of how bodies work. Like he's going to have to age and get stronger and be in an NBA, weight training program for a couple years and then add that size, right? Like he'll have to get there. So like while he might end up being a wing in the league, he might end up being a 3 in the league, he's probably not that right away. He's probably not that in years 1 and 2. So it's like even the roster doesn't necessarily fit him. So I like the pick, and the pick makes sense to me, but also it doesn't necessarily fit the rest of the plan that they had been going for as early as 24 hours before. So like they're trying to square 2 timelines. And I think the interesting thing is, can they do both? And can they thread the needle this summer to add enough extra talent on the roster that they still absolutely need? Because they're not quite there. They're like a borderline playoff team talent-wise right now. Like, can they get there and still benefit from the Sharpe pick? Because I think Sharpe can be really good in the league. It's just he's a best player available type pick for. And I think you got to go best player available at 7 if you're going to keep the pick. I think it's the right move. But choosing to keep the pick has these drawbacks, has these other obvious drawbacks. The Blazers made another pick in this draft. They drafted Jabari Walker, forward from Colorado. Let's meet the man who's the 57th pick in the NBA draft. We'll talk a little about who he is in the second segment. Before we get there, I want to tell you about Bet Online. It's the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. They got more lines, more props, more odds than anywhere else. And what really is going to help you with Bet Online is that if you go and sign up, get a free account, you can start accessing their information about how to bet on sports. Like they have info on basketball. They got, tips and tricks and bets of the day and all of those things, and baseball and soccer and the MMA and the UFC and it's all your combat sports, whatever it might be, more lines, more props, more odds, but also information to make you an informed bettor so you can actually go win some money. So want to go sign up today, take advantage of this offer. That's Bet Online, where the game starts. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. So Shaedon Sharpe is this gamble. I think a gamble that's probably worth it, but a gamble that doesn't necessarily fit the rest of the roster and the rest of this specific offseason plan for the immediate timeline. Not an immediate help, but potentially a superstar in the long term. Depending on, the Blazers will have to, in year 2, really carve out some space for him to play. And in year 1, it's figuring out how darn good he can be. If you're a big believer in Anthony Simons, I think you can see the sort of Shaedon Sharpe plan. Year 1 doesn't play a lot. Year 2, you get a role and see if you can take advantage of it. And by years 3 and 4, you better be ready to go. Ant really wasn't that ready in year 3, but by year 4, he looks just fantastic and had spent a month averaging like 28-7. So, and every time is going to be rewarded for that month, for those like 6 or 7 weeks where he was just really freaking good. I think there's something similar to that with the Sharpe timeline, and I think Sharpe probably today more upside than Ant had in the draft when he went back in 2018. But he wasn't the only selection the Blazers made at 57. So they had 46 from the Jeremy Grant trade, but they traded that away to the Denver Nuggets. So they were left with just one second-round selection, the second to last pick in the draft, and they drafted Jabari Walker from Colorado University. He spent 2 years at Boulder. He is the son of Samaki Walker, who is, if you are too young to know who that is, darn, it means I'm getting old. Top 10 pick in one of the greatest drafts of all time, the 96 draft. Played a decade in the league. And Jabari Walker, the first thing I said when I saw him was like, he looks a lot like Samaki. Jabari Walker's he is a 6'8", 215-pound forward, measured under 6'8" in shoes. You play basketball in shoes. The Blazers have listed at 6'9", so he got even taller since he joined the NBA. But 6'8", 215, measured with a 6'11 wingspan, just shy of 6'11, 6'10 and 3/4 at the NBA Combine, with an 8 foot 9 inch standing reach. He is 6'8" with long arms, and he looks like it when you watch. I watched a little. I watched a very brief Jabari Walker highlight package. I frankly do not know much about him, but I did read a couple scouting reports, and here's what I know about him. Averaged 14.6 points, 9.4 boards, and 1.2 assists, just shy of 1 steal, just shy of 1 block in his sophomore season at Colorado. A first-team All-Pac-12 performer, shot 46% from the floor, 34.6% from 3, and 78.4% from the free throw line. He is, from what I understand, a dude with some shooting potential and a real defensive skills, athlete with long arms who can really defend. He just doesn't do much else on offense. But 6'8" athlete who can really defend and shoot is exactly the prototype, exactly the type of player that's worth taking a flyer on in the second round. I saw Jabari Walker when I was looking at mock drafts to kind of see where he was, undrafted in a couple of them and as high as like the late 30s, like 38, I believe is as high as I saw him. So he was, a guy who was absolutely a second round type pick. And the Blazers, get him at 57 late in the draft. I think, we'll see. I'm also excited to watch him in Summer League to kind of see what he's like. And we're just about 2 weeks away from Summer League. It's pretty fun. Or maybe a little longer, 17 days. But we're going to get I'm excited to get a look at him because I quite frankly have only watched him on YouTube. Did not see a single minute of him as a college basketball player, but at least the frame wise and the skill set wise, he seems to be the type of player that's worth taking the second round pick because he's the right frame. I've said this is like a classic Mike Richmond phrase, but he is shaped like an NBA player. That wingspan, that size with a little bit of shooting chops and really good rebounding ability, really good rebounding numbers, at least in college, one of the best rebounders in the Pac-12. That's what you're looking for. That is the sort of, if you're going to build off, okay, here's the skill set we have, what else can we add? A little bit of shooting, defense, and rebounding is a great place to be at 6'8". Tighten up, become a little bit better shooter, add a little bit more as a slasher on offense, and continue to be a high motor rebounder defender. You're an NBA player. I think that's that's your path to being an NBA player. Obviously not we're not talking superstar upside. I said that a bunch with the first guy. We're not talking about that. We're talking NBA player upside, like rotational NBA player upside, I think is for Jabari Walker, and certainly worth the consideration. Like I said, I'll dive in on him because I just don't know about him. I will talk to my Pac-12 people and try to get some folks who saw him up close, so we can learn a little bit more and get the inside scoop on a guy who went 57th in the draft. I think the real thing with Jabari Walker is he kind of helps you get a little tighter lens on what the Blazers roster is going to look like. Damian Lillard, Nazir Little, Justice Winslow, Keon Johnson, Didi Louzada, Greg Brown, Trendon Watford, Jeremy Grant, Shaedon Sharpe, Jabari Walker. It's 10 dudes under contract. If you assume Josh Hart, who's on a non-guaranteed deal, they're going to pick up they're going to guarantee the deal, which they are. Now you're at 11. Anthony Simons and Yusuf Nurkic are free agents. Ant is restricted. He's coming back absolutely. Because the Blazers haven't made any other moves, I'd say Nurk is like a 95% chance to come back, maybe higher, 98% chance to come back, just because the Blazers didn't. If they had made some other tweaks, maybe it's like Nurk would be involved in those tweaks, and certainly he could be down the line. But I think both those guys are coming back. You're looking at 13 players on the roster and a two-way spot already filled by Brandon Williams. So Portland isn't, they're probably not done, right? Like I would still expect them to be active in the trade market this summer, and I still expect them, they need another center, they need another forward. They just desperately need more size up front. They could even add 2 centers with those last 2 spots, and it'd be fine with me just because they're desperately going to need more size to be certain. But is investing in mid-level exception and a backup center really the move? So they've got things to do. I think that back half of the roster with Keon Johnson and Didi Louzada and Greg Brown, I think you got to figure out a way to not have one of those dudes take up a roster spot. We'll see if the Blazers can accomplish that. It's not super easy, because Didi has guaranteed money and you've kind of invested a little bit in the futures of young guys like Keon Johnson and Greg Brown, as a second round pick and Keon who's a first round pick who, again, it's some guaranteed money. But I think I'm maybe not very high on those guys' upside, and I think the Blazers need veterans in those spots just because the back half of the roster, if you're a believer in Greg Brown that he can be a contributor, I think the Blazers are in a really good spot. I'm not necessarily a big time believer in him being a contributor in year 2. I really like Trendon Watford, but I'm not sure he's a contributor on a good team in year 2. So the back half of the roster is a little dicey. Is Jabari Walker a contributor in year 1? If Shaedon Sharpe's also not a contributor in year 1, you're looking at like 5 players who can't really play like on a good team. Not like unplayable, but you wouldn't want to play. You would not want to say, well, if we can survive the 17 minutes of Keon Johnson tonight, we'll be all right. Like, I just don't think that's realistic for a team. And I think like the Blazers, they're better off not having taken all 3 of their draft picks. But if you assume that like neither of the guys, and I think assuming a guy who went 57, assuming a guy who's never played high level college basketball are not year 1 contributors, I think that's very safe. And you look at the rest of the roster, like they got to probably make one, if not several moves to shore up, just have more dudes who you can count on to contribute. If you're a little higher on the Blazers' young parts, you probably disagree there. But for me, I think that after the draft, that's where they stand. After the draft, we made it. Draft night's fun. Shaedon Sharpe's fun. Like a little bit weird fit with the sort of plan, but like high upside superstar potential. He's fun. As for a second round pick, I could easily talk myself into being a Jabari Walker fan. Like I said, a minute into summer league, I'll make some firmer decisions on stuff like that. Next week, we'll dive in winners and losers from the draft on Monday, get a closer look at Jabari Walker later in the week, talk to some folks who've maybe seen Shaedon Sharpe up close on the AAU circuit, and just getting to know the new guys and looking ahead to the offseason. We are, a few days away about a week away from heading into summer league. The offseason's here. It's one of the most important offseasons the Blazers have had in the last 15 years, and I'll have you covered 5 days a week. So why don't you make the show your first listen every single day and then tell your friends to do the same. Come back next week. We got more shows. Appreciate you listening. Talk to you soon.